Hey everyone, if you've been feeling really exhausted and you're gaining weight without explanation, or you're constantly dealing with brain fog and just dragging your feet through the day, your thyroid might actually be the missing piece of the puzzle. And so I want to talk about the thyroid today around things that you need to understand about the thyroid and why this could be linked to a lot of your symptoms. I see this all the time. People are struggling with like classic thyroid symptoms and they're being told by the doctor, you're actually totally fine. They go get their thyroid tested, the labs come back, they say you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, and they're kind of gaslit. And I want to break that down, why that is happening. And this happens to almost every person I talk to pretty much that's struggling with any type of energy, fatigue, anxiety, weight gain, symptoms. And if I had $1 for every time that someone was told their thyroid is normal or fine when actually it's not, it's under functioning or slightly over functioning, I wouldn't need a job. So I wouldn't need to have a business. So I just want to break that down to you for you today and help you understand a little bit more around the thyroid and how that impacts everything else with our health. So, first of all, the thyroid is a really small but powerful gland, and it regulates your energy and your metabolism. It sits here in your throat. It's a little butterfly-shaped gland. It regulates body temperature. It's involved in mood and brain function. It's involved in hormones, particularly your menstrual cycle. And so when your thyroid is not working properly, like we actually need thyroid hormone in every single cell of our body. And when our thyroid is not working properly, we will feel it. And so symptoms can include things like fatigue, low energy, unexplained weight gain. Like sometimes women will look at things and feel like, I often say, do you just feel like you look at things and you put on weight and they're like, yes, or I really can't shift it, or they're gaining weight without any explanation, like they're doing all the same things and the weight is slowly gaining. Brain fog, real huge issues, concentrating, anxiety, irritability, depression, hair thinning, so hair falling out, including thinning of the eyebrows or the last third of the eyebrows, dry skin, feeling cold all the time, or cold hands and feet, or overheating, muscle weakness, joint pain, changes in appetite and digestion, so often constipation will be a really common thyroid symptom, and irregular menstrual cycles. Now, you might not have all of these symptoms, but these are some of the symptoms that can show up, and they're the common ones I see. And so if this sounds familiar, it's quite possible that your thyroid is not functioning optimally, even if your doctor has looked at your thyroid and said it's fine. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more. So one of the reasons why doctors say this is because they actually only test one of the thyroid markers, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And so this doesn't actually tell us the full story. Thyroid stimulating hormone is actually made by the pituitary gland to signal to the thyroid to make more thyroid hormone. And so this actually doesn't really tell us what's happening with the thyroid hormone, the production of thyroid hormone, and how we're converting it and how it's actually able to get into the cell. And so remember I said before, you need thyroid hormone to get into every cell or to bind to every cell. It's basically signaling speed it up, speed it down. Now, let's go back one step. What's hormone? A hormone is a chemical messenger. When we talk about hormones, we have two types of chemical messengers in the body. We have hormones and we have neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers for the nervous system. Hormones are chemical messengers for the endocrine system, which is your internal system for hormones, right? For internally, endocrine meaning in. So we have those. So when we're talking about thyroid hormones, we're talking about chemical messengers that the body is making to speed things up or slow things down. The thyroid is actually your foot on the accelerator. So often what happens with, you measure TSH, that's really the foot on the accelerator, but it doesn't tell us, okay, how much hormone are we making and how is it converting and how is it actually getting into the cell? And this is really important. So many doctors, the full thyroid panel would be TSH, free T4, which is your inactive thyroid hormone, free T3, which is your active thyroid hormone, reverse T3, which I'll explain in a minute, and thyroid antibodies. And so we need to look at all of these factors to see how things are converting. And I'm going to share a little diagram with you in a minute, and so this will make more sense. But it's really crucial that we look at all of these so we understand what's going on, right? Now, the other thing to note is with the ranges that are done, so say you go to the doctor and you get blood tests done and they say it's normal. The reference ranges that is done by the labs, and everything I'm talking about is in context to pathology testing in Australia. It does apply to other countries, but if you're watching this and this is really about me practicing in Australia and my looking at pathology in Australia, but it still does apply to other countries, but there's going to be some nuances in that, right? So with the reference ranges, it's actually the medium of everyone that they test and what has happened over time, because it's the medium as our population and the Western population has gotten more sick over time. The reference ranges have gotten bigger, meaning they're not actually looking at what's optimally healthy. So reference ranges are actually very different to optimal ranges, and optimal ranges for the most part, with a few exceptions, are very narrow. It's like, what does that need to be? And that's been researched and looked at for someone who is actually very healthy. That's very different. And so what a lot of the time also happens is your TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone made by your pituitary gland, can be between like 0.5 to 5, and it could be on the low, like somewhere in that range, but it's actually telling us that your thyroid is struggling to make hormones if it's not within optimal range, right? So that's really important, because sometimes I see a high TSH. As soon as it starts to get over 2, I start to get a little bit concerned and go, oh, okay, there's something going on here. Or it goes lower, I also start to get concerned and go, what's happening here? So this is really important also, because when they look at TSH, they will just go, oh yeah, it's fine because it's within the range, but it's not looking at optimal ranges. The other thing that's really important to note is the system that is dictated in Australia is the Medicare system, and doctors, GPs, and general practitioners in Australia have been instructed by the governing bodies to only test these, and you have to be able to justify your reasoning for these tests. And if you aren't able to justify your reasoning, you will potentially lose your license, right? I've seen these letters. This is really happening. There's also been letters that have been put out saying if a complementary medicine practitioner comes and asks for these blood tests, they're not to be put through on Medicare. So the system does not want complementary medicine to be supported, and they do not want to look at preventative medicine, which is and looking at the root cause. And it is dictated to what can be and can't be claimed on Medicare. Now, that's really important, because this is why people go to the GP and go, I asked for full thyroid panel and also was told I couldn't get it. And they might have got a roll of the eyes from the doctor, or depending on the doctor's viewpoint and where they stand and what their experience is and how scared they are of the system, they will have a different reaction. But this is what you've got to understand. It's not even necessarily the GP. They're very dictated by the system, and we need to understand that. So if we want to actually really look at the thyroid, we need to be prepared to pay for it, which is a real shame, because there's a lot of people who can't afford that, but that actually is the reality at the moment of the system. Sometimes you can go and get some of these, but you won't always get all of them, and it depends on your health history and what's going on for you, right? So that's important. The other thing is, it's really the really important part to note with this is the thyroid really needs the right levels of nutrients to function healthy. So we need lots of vitamins and minerals, including iodine, selenium and zinc, vitamin D, iron. We need B vitamins, we need vitamin C to actually allow thyroid production production of thyroid hormones to be created. And this is really important, and this is the bit that also doesn't get looked at. And I'm going to share with you this picture, and you'll understand more why, right? The other thing is that stress and inflammation and toxins, for example, fluoride in the water, can cause poor absorption or create a lack of absorption with these minerals and vitamins and minerals. And even poor gut health can actually really block your thyroid from working properly. And stress is a really, really, really big one. So all of these factors play a role. Now, when we're talking about stress, the adrenals have a really big impact on our thyroid function. And the best way that I can explain it is, as I said before, your thyroid is the foot on the accelerator, the adrenals is the brake. So what happens when we have a foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time? People who grow up in the country seem to be able to answer this easier than people that grow up in the city. But you start to, like, if you had your foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time, the wheels start to burn and you burn rubber and you burn out. And that is literally what happens in the body. So when we're under extreme stress and our nervous system is in a constant state of alarm and we're pumping out adrenaline and cortisol constantly, the thyroid is trying to keep up, and often there'll be other minerals that will impact thyroid, also including things like calcium, and that will cause it to speed up or slow down. And if the thyroid hasn't got the right ingredients, it's going to struggle. And so it's actually trying to speed things up and it's struggling, and then the adrenals are under the pump as well, and there's this conflict that's happening internally in the body. This can happen for a long time before it shows up on pathology blood results. Now, I do a lot of one of the other tests that I do is hair tissue mineral analysis with people, and that will show up a lot earlier on due to looking at minerals in the tissue. So you cut a bit of hair off the back of your head, you send it off to a lab, it goes off to a lab in the States, it comes back, it looks at minerals that are in the tissue, and it also looks at heavy metals. And so these are two big factors. Minerals and heavy metals will also impact thyroid function because it can block our mineral absorption. It can cause inflammation. Heavy metals will cause a lot of inflammation, and not having the right balance of minerals will really impact the thyroid. And it's a very sensitive little gland. So there's lots of different factors that can affect that, and it can be going on for a long time before it even really shows up. And if you go to the doctor and they say to you, oh yeah, your thyroid's slow, it would have been going on for a long time, and I can guarantee there would be a lot of deficiencies going on and other factors that are influencing that. But for it to show up for a doctor, like a general practitioner, not an integrative GP, a normal general practitioner to comment on it, it's got to be probably outside the reference range. They probably aren't going to look at antibodies unless it's really outside range. And by that point, you've gone really far down the path into disease state. And it will keep going like that until it gets to the point where it then becomes hypothyroidism or autoimmune. And what then happens is the immune system starts attacking the thyroid gland, and over time it stops working because it hasn't got the ingredients to keep working, and the immune system starts attacking it. So autoimmune is one of the biggest causes of hypothyroidism. Hypo means slow, so slow thyroid, all right? So there's all these different factors that we've got to look at, right? But the first thing is we've got to look at what's happening with the thyroid and look at the thyroid panel. We then have to look at key nutrients, and then we also have to look at stress and gut health and look at your diet and you as a lifestyle factor and also chemicals. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you a diagram and share my screen and actually go through that so you actually understand what is required to look when you're looking at the thyroid. And it's really important. You can actually go and find this diagram on the internet. I'll show it to you, and I'm going to take you through what that actually looks like. Okay, so this is a little diagram. Let's just go full screen. That is called factors that affect thyroid function. And I've used this a lot around when I'm looking at things and trying to understand what's going on with the thyroid. And so, as I said before, the TSH is actually made by the pituitary gland, and then it gets transported to the thyroid, and we make T4, and T4 is this inactive thyroid hormone, it has 4 molecules of iodine. So first of all, we need iodine to make adequate levels of T4, but we also need iron, tyrosine, which is an amino acid, zinc, selenium, vitamin E, B2, B3, B6, vitamin C, and D2. We also need a healthy liver function and methylation. And methylation is like how you convert your B vitamins, and that's all you need to know about that, like converting it from the inactive form to the active form, and it really affects liver function and a lot of different things, but it can really also affect thyroid function. So that's making T4. Factors that inhibit production of thyroid hormones include stress, infection, so underlying infections like underlying viral infections, trauma, radiation, medications, fluoride. And fluoride is the main one because it's an antagonist to iodine. So it binds to it stops the absorption of iodine, and this is why drinking clean filtered water without fluoride in it is really, really important. Toxins, pesticides, including lead, mercury, and cadmium. And part of that is also because it actually, like for example, minerals like selenium are actually used to detoxify heavy metals. And so if we have heavy metals present, not only does it cause damage to the cells, but it will also use up a lot of our minerals because the body is trying to protect the cells and will use the minerals to detox. So then that means they're not available for the thyroid hormone to use. Autoimmune disease, so TPO antibodies and TPG antibodies, which is a type of antibodies with your thyroid, poor gut function, standard Australian diet or standard American diet, and processed food, particularly gluten. Gluten is a real big problem with the thyroid and can stop the production of your thyroid hormones. And then it goes from T4 and it actually has to go and then get converted to T3, which is the active form. So it drops a molecule of iodine to become active. And we need, for this conversion process to happen, selenium, zinc, and vitamin D. So if you don't have adequate levels of these, you're not going to be able to convert accurately. Often I see people with like low T4 and it will still be within range, but it will still be like subclinically, like there'll be deficiencies starting to go on, like for example, low iodine, and it starts to go low. But then what happens also is their T3 is low. So it might not be hugely low, but it's low enough to sort of start to notice symptoms. And then T3 will bind to the receptor and then it will go into the cell. So it needs to bind to the receptor site. You need factors that improve cellular sensitivity to this is vitamin A, exercise, zinc, progesterone, and hydration. So that's how it happens, and that's the thing that then will tell the mitochondria to speed up or slow down, right? So that is how it happens. Every single cell in our body needs thyroid hormone. Okay. So then what can also happen is rather than going down this path of T4 to T3 and binding to the receptor, it will go down this path called reverse T3 instead of it. And factors that can increase the conversion of T4 to reverse T3 is stress, trauma. Now, trauma could be emotional, but also physical trauma, low calorie diet, inflammation, which is going back to the gut, toxins, so things like heavy metals, infections, particularly viral or bacterial infections, but underlying viral infections is a big one, liver and kidney dysfunctions, and certain medications. So what can happen is what I often see is people's reverse T3 can start to creep up or be quite high, and T4 function may be like, subclinically low, but not out of the reference range, and so could T3. It might be converting, but most of it's going down this pathway to reverse T3. And then what happens is it blocks onto the receptor and it stops T3 binding. So the body is actually not getting thyroid hormone into the cell. And this is why a lot of the symptoms can show up. So we've got to look at the whole picture and what is going on and why is this happening. And unfortunately, when you go to the doctor, this is why, because they're not looking at all the other factors. They're not treating the person as a whole. They don't have time. It's not their fault. It's the system. And so I want to really point that out, is like, it's no one's fault. It's the way the system is designed that is actually not designed to look at, okay, what do we need to be optimally healthy? So if you are having any problems with anything that we spoke about, like in presenting with any of the symptoms, I really, really, really encourage you to actually go and get accurately tested, and also get someone to look at the results for you. So if you're still watching this and you've gotten to the end and it's really resonating and you're feeling exhausted and frustrated and you feel really unheard by your doctor, I just encourage you to really trust your body. Symptoms are real, they deserve to be taken seriously, and I hope this video helps you understand why thyroid issues can often be overlooked and what you can actually do to take control of your health. And if this resonates, drop a comment below or share this, or reach out to me if you want more guidance or what that could look like. And I will see you in the next video. See ya.